But that's us. We'll be in the booth. We have the easy job. The guys that have the tough job are in the booth right next to us. Assistant coaches. They got to get the team ready. And one of those is on your radio right now. Steve Spurrier Jr., he coaches the outside wide receivers for Mississippi State. And a name you recognize, certainly. And he's got a big job because those guys have to catch a ball and run with it a lot in this offense if it's working well. Coach Spurrier, I do appreciate some time. And, man, they say time flies, you get older, but the season's already here, starting practice on Friday. I know you're pumped.
Yeah, time flies, time moves fast. And last year, for as long as it was, kind of came and went quickly. But we're certainly excited to have had the opportunity to kind of see our guys, to coach our guys, to get through a spring, get through a summer. And we report tomorrow and start Friday morning. We're certainly excited for that day to arrive.
Well, and you mentioned getting to go through spring, which that's one major difference for you and the staff and the players as opposed to a year ago. From your perspective, Coach, how important, how do you describe just how important it was for the players to be able to go through the reps in spring practice and actually get to do that this year?
Well, I mean, that was critical, but to go ahead and make that statement, that was critical for every football team in America.
Sure. Yeah, that's right.
Spring ball means so much but especially a new staff that hadn't been here, hadn't been around our guys, haven't implemented our system, our terminology, our style of coaching. But there were a lot of first-year coaches out there as well. So it affected all of us. What we do and how we do it and what, Coach Leach's system is and how we run this air raid and how we practice and the reps that mean so much to what we do every day, to have the ability to go through a spring, to have a quarterback truly in place, to have some leaders truly in place that believe in what we're doing, has meant a lot. So we're a much better team than we were last year at this time.
Yeah, I'm curious to how you would answer this. When it comes to leaders and leadership, from your perspective is, on an offense, on the offensive side of the ball, are you just looking for, 2-3 bell cow leaders and you don't care what position they play? Or for you as a receivers coach, do you want to make sure you have a leader or two in your room? Like you got to have a guy at your position who's a leader on the football team.
Well, every coach encourages that. Leadership carries the team. So every coach has to find leaders and bring it out of them and make sure they represent themselves. Every single thing they do on and off the field, in the weight room, around their group, on the field, to every extent they can. Now, some guys are naturally better leaders than others. Some guys are naturally more vocal than others. I would love to have 15 leaders on offense. Usually it is about a 4 or 5. It doesn't matter what position it is. But certainly each position coach, and certainly myself, I'm encouraging my best players, my most talented guys, my hardest working guys, to hold everyone accountable to the highest standard. And lead and represent this team to where we need to be. And your best players can do that.
Mm-hmm. Steve Spurrier Jr. on your radio right now. So the follow-up would be, do you have that in your room of outside wide receivers right now, a guy that's first in every drill and everybody kind of watches him? Do you have that yet?
We have some talented guys. We haven't quite put ourselves in the position to be the leaders we need to be. But we're gaining on that. And, one of my more talented players that I really like is Mekhi Pope, who's a transfer from Cal, who's a California guy. So, it's difficult for him to walk in here and immediately announce his presence as the leader of this group.
Yeah.
So his leadership comes through how he practices and how he plays, how he competes and who he is, which is outstanding. But as a group and over time, Malik Heath's a guy that's been here, a Mississippi guy. He's not as vocal as other guys, but he certainly can, by how he plays and competes and how physically he plays, has a chance to be a leader. Tulu Griffin's another. He's a young kid. So he's got a chance to really have an outstanding year, but he's still young, and he has to earn that right to be the leader he can be. Caleb Ducking's another player I like a lot that did not play at all last year, redshirt. So he's a guy that has a chance to be a leader, but until you prove to everyone that you're capable of playing the game at a high level, it's hard for you to get out there and start telling people what to do. But hopefully one day we're going to have several in that group.
Well, and you said it. I guess what you're kind of touching on there is, there's only so much leadership presence you can earn in the spring and in the off season. You got to go earn it against like Auburn and Alabama and LSU and Ole Miss and Arkansas and those guys, don't you?
Absolutely. You got to earn it on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And you can always be recognized as a guy that has a chance to be a leader. But before you take the field and expect 10 guys to follow you out there, you have to prove that on Saturdays you are capable of helping your team win football games.
Sure, no doubt about it. Coach Steve Spurrier Jr. on your radio right now. Okay, and so you mentioned a couple of those guys. The first one you mentioned there was Makai Polk, a 6'3" outside receiver transfer from Cal. And we got to see him a little bit in the spring, as a catch or two where he kind of really showed some hops and some length. He goes up in high points of football. So as we talk about potential, you touched on a little bit. What do you think for Makai Polk?
Well, time will tell. We'll find out on Saturday. And honestly, I don't like talking about a guy a lot until he does something on Saturday. Makai, I think, is a talented young man. He's got a lot of upside. He's an intelligent player. He's a competitive player, and he's got the skill set to be a really, really good receiver. But until he does it, he's another receiver in the air raid that's a guy that expected to catch 60 or 70 balls this year.
Sure. You mentioned Tulu. He's going to wear number 5 this year. Tulu Griffin, big game in the bowl game, right. Returning the football. Yeah. And he's 5'10". Yeah. How do you make the decision, hey, this guy is an outside receiver, even though he's not that 6'3", 6'4"?
You know what? We had some discussions last fall, and Dave Nickel, who coaches the inside receivers, he said, listen, I think Tulu is an inside player. I think, and I got a couple guys we can trade with you. I said, I don't think so. To me, and again, anywhere I've ever coached receivers, I've coached them all. And I always thought you put your best players on the field and you kind of find a spot for them. So I've never particularly thought your short guys are inside guys and your big guys are outside guys. And some of the way this offense is set up, there's certain positions that are bigger than others. There's certain positions that need to be quicker than others. Certain positions need to be smarter than others. But Tulu's a guy you could put at any wide receiver position we have, and I think he'd really be successful. So he's an X. I'm going to coach him. I like him, and I'm going to keep him there.
Sure. Well, and, I notice, so Jameer Calvin, and I'm assuming, Coach, that, he's a guy that you knew going back to Washington State. And without knowing if he was outside or inside, I'm just kind of bringing that name up to you, help us get a little bit of a scouting report on another new Bulldog, Jameer Calvin.
Yep. Yeah, now he was an inside receiver at Washington State.
Okay.
He played for Coach Nickel at Washington State, and we plan on him being an inside receiver here. And what he brings to us, and he's a talented, fast, quick, strong player, but he brings a lot of experience in our offense. And our offense, it just requires repetition. It requires understanding of how different plays are supposed to fit, how you get open on them. And he has a couple good years of experience under his belt. So, he's an inside player. He's got the experience at that position, and we look forward to him having a good year here. We really do.
Coach Spurrier, and I certainly understand, we're all careful about patting guys on the back before they've done it on Saturdays, especially freshmen coming in. And you just touched on, the offense, as much as any offense, requires all those reps and practice time. So when you have freshmen coming into the group, whether it's like a Harmon or a Knox, what's the approach with those first-year guys out of high school when you start practice on Friday?
Well, we play that 4 wide receivers 80% of the time. We play 8 receivers in every game. Certainly a guy that's more talented than another, a guy that has more experience, a guy that's just a better player will play more. But 8 guys in every game will get an opportunity to play wide receiver in this offense each week.